Good morning, ladies and gentlemen. Welcome to the day after Labor Day. Different this year, but we're all moving forward, and New York State is moving forward, and we're moving forward in Westchester. And today we're moving forward with the 8th and the final webinar in the Business Council of Westchester's Anti-Racism Education Series. Now, these have been so well received that so if you missed any over the summer, we've all been away and have hopefully taken some vacation. They are live on the BCW's Anti-Racism Resource Center on our website at www.thebcw.org. So please share them. We've received such positive feedback on the content. The Business Council of Westchester is committed to standing against racism and to create a call to action for all of our members to make a difference in the communities that we all represent across New York State and the region. We will continue to seek opportunities for the BCW to play a critical role in both advancing the conversation about dismantling racism and, most important, in taking actionable steps to support real change. As many of you know, we've announced our first steps in our multifaceted program that includes listening, actions, resources, programming, and more. And please stay tuned to us at the BCW, as there will be more under the leadership of our great chairman, Heidi Davidson, and our board of directors. We are so pleased to have many other voices in the community join us in partnership for today's Ask the Experts. So we want to thank you especially to our presenting partner, Balancing Life's Issues, and their president and CEO, Wendy Wollner. We want to thank our event partners, Business Council of New York State, the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce, the New York State Economic Development Council, the Westchester Putnam Workforce Board, and the Putnam County Business Council. You've all been fabulous partners to us. You are a great organization representing businesses throughout New York State. And now I'd like to introduce the chairman of the BCW board, Heidi Davidson, co-founder and CEO of Galvanize Worldwide. Heidi?
Thanks, Marcia. Good morning, everyone. I joined Marcia and am so pleased to represent the board of directors of the BCW in welcoming you to this anti-racism educational series, and also thanking the partners on your screen as well. As Marcia mentioned, we've joined forces with federal, state, and local level business organizations that share our same desire to create a call to action to make a difference in our communities. Our goal is to advance the conversation to end racism and to provide resources and actionable steps for businesses to support real change. We are grateful you are here with us. We're grateful for everyone who's taken part in these sessions. We hope that you're finding them valuable and that you're helping spread the word to your community and to your business network as well. As Marcia mentioned, this is our last one for now, but these sessions are available and recorded on the Business Council's website at thebcw.org. And anyone can access them for free. So please pass that along and reference back to them throughout the year if you need them. And again, I just thank you for joining. I'll turn this program back over to Marcia to introduce our speakers for this Ask the Experts session. Thanks, Marcia.
Thank you, Heidi. And again, I want to thank Wendy Wollner, the President and Chief Executive Officer of Balancing Life's Issues, who really is the force behind pulling this series together. And I'll put in a plug for Wendy's business now. She is a terrific resource for business education and training in all kinds of topics. And Wendy, thank you for everything you've done. And a winner of our Hall of Fame award, well deserved. We have met before. Dr. Mel Campbell, who's a motivational psychologist, trainer, and speaker, and Jada Jackson, who's president of Total Life Counseling Center. So I'll let them I'll let them reintroduce themselves. But I would like to introduce, because she's with us for the first time, Gabrielle Gambrell. She is a communications, branding, and media expert. She most recently served as Vice President and Head of Marketing and Communications at Barnard College of Columbia University, the most selective institution in the U.S. devoted to empowering extraordinary women. Gabrielle made history in her role as both the first Black woman to hold her title, as well as the youngest since in 1889. She's also an NYU professor where she teaches graduate level courses in integrated marketing, digital and social media, media relations, corporate communications, and more. I believe you're also on the board of Iona College, Gabrielle?
Yes, I'm on
very proud of
board
that.
with
Iona is
Christy.
a great member of ours, and the president is a member of our board, Dr. Seamus Carey. Her career spans 10 years at many world-renowned media giants, including Comcast, NBC Universal, CBS Corporation, and ABC, all by the age of 27. She's amazing, as are our two other speakers, Mel Campbell and Jada Jackson. Wendy Wollner, I turn this over to you for this really exciting Ask the Experts opportunity. Thank you all. You need to unmute.
The most common word this year, right? You have to unmute. So I'm both really humbled and honored to be here today with some of my peers. I am born and raised in Westchester, so it's really an honor to be involved in this. We're going to go ahead and introduce ourselves, but we're also going to have a lot of fun because we've put together a bunch of our own questions, but we're anxious to hear from everyone. So this is going to be very fast paced. We're going to try to make it a little bit like a radio show. So, don't think about multitasking. Be here, be now is what we always say in our classes. If you go ahead and say hi to us and welcome, then I know that we're all together. But in the meantime, why don't we go ahead and Dr. Mel, give us a 30-second brief re-intro to you, please.
Very good. My name is Dr. Mel Campbell. I am a psychologist. I am also a speaker and trainer. Taught about 40,000 students, 1,000 seminars, 6 countries. I'm an author, a coach, and I'm also someone who has given a seminar of self-care in the face of trauma in the past for this organization. I am also of mixed race, so I'm both African-American as well as white. So it's been an amazing experience. I'm looking forward to talking with you today and answering any questions you have about the diversity topic.
Great. And Jada?
Hello, everyone. I'm Dr. Jada Jackson. I am a licensed mental health counselor and a licensed professional counselor, and I enjoy this topic so very much. I am also trained in multicultural competency, so I look forward to contributing to this panel.
Awesome. So you can see that I use the chat feature and only 2 of you have said hello, which makes me really feel badly. So we really want this to be an interactive class. So please get comfortable with the chat. I'm going to go ahead and start it off. And by the way, I should tell everybody, they are forewarned that I may interrupt and shake it up and move it around because we do want to make sure we get to everybody's question. But, and we're getting a few more highs and people saying they're excited. Some names I know, which is always exciting. So Gabrielle, I wake up every morning and I'm almost nervous to put on the news. But I do believe, as Marcia and Heidi introduced, that we want to have a positive conversation. So I'm going to give you each just really a short amount of time, an action step, and make it directed to Wendy. Because I'm feeling a little like first day of school, a lot of things happening. And I'm feeling like, how do I really stay positive in this anti-racism? Like, what are the skills that I need to be positive as a mom, as a daughter, as a CEO? Help me out here.
Yeah, so there's so much going on in the world. And so one thing you can do in order to stay positive, despite the hardships, despite the difficult conversations that are taking place, is making sure you're informed. So yes, there's hardship, there's a bunch of negative things happening, but there's also progress being made. So what organizations are pushing the needle further? How can you support those organizations? What organizations are having body conversations in order to foster diversity, equity, and inclusion, and making sure as a mother, as a CEO, as a mother, you're having important conversations with your children about what's happening and how they can make a difference. As a CEO, making sure that your staff knows that you recognize what's happening in the world, and you are reflective of the emotions they may be feeling. So making sure you're informed and speaking on that information you're obtaining.
I love that. So if we're taking some notes here, it's about being informed, right? Really staying in the know with accurate information. Dr. Mel, what would you add to that?
Well, I'm a big believer in not watching what I call CNN, constant negative news. Now, I'm not saying nothing wrong with the news station itself. I'm just saying you want to focus on the positive that's happening in the world so you can grow that in your life rather than the negative. You are the sum total of what information that you're seeing. We're going to mention some great resources to look at, some movies, some books. Why not get educated about this topic and not rely on somebody else to necessarily give you the education? As a psychologist, Psychology Today, if you type in psychology, racism, Psychology Today has about 3 articles ready to go to talk about this topic. So I'm all about listening to PNN, the Positive News Network. What's positive going on in terms of some of the change that are going on? So it's about changing our state from the negative to the positive.
I love that idea. Okay, so really looking for positive stories. I always watch CBS Sunday Morning. They always have some good ones as well. Jada, what would you add to that?
I love what Mel and Gabrielle said. So what I'll do is I'll just kind of build on what they've already said. And I definitely believe in exposing ourselves to information, what Mel said about being positive, and also being very aware of one's self. We have to be able to manage our own emotions because remember, everything that we feel, we're going to act out. So if we're not aware of what's taking place with us individually, we have the potential to go into a situation blinded and emotionally hijacked. So I'll definitely say being emotionally intelligent.
Yeah, I love that. And if you haven't rewatched Inside Out, I'm going to do a shout out for it. It's a great family movie. It talks about the importance of emotions, written by some great EQ people, which we do over here. So we got a great question about, and we talked a little bit about this in our fostering inclusion class, but we certainly do believe in the theory of blind hiring. But Mel, help me out here. How do I really do that in the best way? How can I really be inclusive to make sure our environment, our work environment is as diverse as possible in today's complicated world?
Well, unconscious bias is kind of part of the psychology aspect of all of this. And when you're hiring just for talent and you're hiring for the person and releasing anything that can seem any bias at all in some of your hiring practices, as well as being able to pull diversity from different parts of society. You will be surprised at how people can shock you when you see their talent masked by labels. Right. So when you're hiring, you definitely want to make sure you're aware of your unconscious bias. Sometimes I like 2 people in the hiring process so they can see 2 different points of view to eliminate some of that unconscious bias. And we have to be fresh in our approach. You're going to hire some amazing employees if you get rid of that unconscious bias and do it from their skill set and their talent and their ability.
Yeah. So I know if you haven't rewatched the famous YouTube video of Oprah trying to buy the Birkin bag, and the salesperson won't sell it to her. That is a great one to show your team of unconscious bias. Can you really imagine not selling Oprah a bag and thinking she couldn't afford it, right? I mean, that was just not that long ago. So Gabrielle, what would you add in terms of, how I can make my own hiring practices and my own world more inclusive?
Yeah, definitely. Excellent question. So even when I'm hiring for a position and I'm working with HR, I literally give the mandate that some of the applicants be people of color. HR should never give me a title applicant unless it does not, the title must include a person of color, or else I won't even look at it. So that gets to a deep deeper conversation. How do I find diverse candidates? Where are the diverse candidates? Everyone in my network looks like me. Everyone in my network has the same experiences. How do I expand my network? Something I've been seeing a lot of hiring managers do on LinkedIn, which perhaps may have been uncomfortable or awkward in the past, but now in 2020 is being okay, is literally saying, I'm hiring for this position. I want to make sure that I'm considering people of color. Please share with your network. Help me identify.
Gabrielle, let me just interrupt you for 1 second. We're having a lot of trouble hearing, Gabrielle, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you. I don't know if you could call in. Gabrielle, we're having a lot of trouble hearing you on your audio. I'm going to go ahead. I'm going to go ahead and, perfect. Okay, let me mute. Okay, so I apologize for that. And I know you heard the background news.
She was my colleague and student at NYU. She did that recently. She literally, and she tagged people of color that she knows. So she tagged me, hey, Gabrielle, I'm hiring. And so on LinkedIn, the way the platform works, if you're tagged in something, then everyone that follows you and connected you.
Sorry, everybody. We're going to try to work this through.
I'll call in.
Yeah, thanks, Gabrielle. It may be easier just to hear you. So I tried to pick up everything that Gabrielle said because she's got a wealth of information in this. You heard Mel talk about the unconscious bias, and you heard Gabrielle talk about talking about it. So Jade, anything you would add in terms of really making sure that we're having an inclusive hiring? Because I love the point Gabrielle said about look where you're looking, right? Look where you're going to, you're doing the look.
Absolutely. And it's no different from, being in a company or starting a business where you're trying to identify your perfect client, right? So we really also want to identify the perfect employee and how does that employee contribute to our team. I would also say that it's very important, and I'm probably going to always go back to that personal and individual responsibility and being willing to ask oneself. And I think Mel hit on this as well. Where is that unconscious bias? Where are my preferences targeted? And if I can be genuine and authentic with myself, then I have a better opportunity for asking the right questions and challenging myself. But then I would also say, last thing, Wendy, is to remove all identifiable characteristics on any platform if it's going to identify age, identify race, identify any characteristics that may trigger your preference or your unconscious bias. Be willing to do that so you can see if that person is really qualified for the job.
So hopefully one of the takeaways is, again, I'm a big takeaway person, is the first thing, it starts with me. It starts with, how am I feeling? Let's do some introspection. Let's open ourselves up to maybe the problem is me. We don't really like to think that, but it's part of our growth. I love the question about how can we be more aware of the people we're partnering with. At BLI, we started about 2 months ago a support Black business community on our Facebook and our social media. We really talked about, where can we spend our resources? Who do we need to know about? Who can we do a shout out to? Who can we support from business to business or business to consumer? So I think that's one of the really key components, is looking about your vendors and your contractors about how have you done? How diverse are they? Gabrielle, let's do a quick sound check. How are we doing over there?
Is this better?
I like that. Yay, much better. We love technology. So I'm gonna switch it here because I really love this question. Is, do you have advice for businesses about their mission statements, and not just their business mission statements? By the way, BLI has just been asked to write how to teach people to do their own personal mission statement. So let's talk about that. What should it look like, our business and our personal mission statement?
I think the important
No,
that
Gabrielle, it was better.
individuals see themselves in.
No,
How about now?
not so much. Let me go ahead and put you on mute
Yes.
for a minute. It's a
No.
big delay there. Mel, do you want to jump in?
Okay, I'm just
Sure.
gonna call in. I'll just call in.
Okay, that's better. Go ahead, Mel, jump in.
So, I'm a firm believer that a mission statement should always be about its people. And it's interesting as a psychologist when the company comes together and decides what their mission statement is together, where it's all inclusive. They're all talking about what they want in terms of mission. And when you have a diverse employee set, you're going to have a lot of different ideas on what that could look like. How more empowering will an employee be when they all created the mission statement together and they're working towards that mission? So it is important to have the leader that does the mission at the same time. When everybody has buy-in, it can be really impressive. And when you do the diversity statement, you want to think about the inclusion of diversity and how unique. And we're not just talking about a black or white issue. We're talking about generational issue. We're talking about male-female. There's so many different aspects to a mission statement for employees. And you want to make sure everybody is on the same page with the mission. It pumps them up, that it motivates them, and they're ready to work every day towards that mission statement.
A lot, and by the way, writing your mission statement, I love the questions that are coming in about that. There's no better time to do it than now. Beginning of a new school year, beginning of a new, half and half hybrid. This is a great time. We're coming up to a presidential election. Great time to do that. Jada, what would you ask?
Mel said it best, and I would just say, define and redefine that mission statement to make sure that everyone is on the same page. And if it means having the hard conversation about racism, discrimination, and inclusion, and what does that look like for the company, then going ahead and having those conversations and then start from there to redefine the mission statement.
So Jada just said something which has been one of my soapbox about the hard conversation, right? And somebody else is writing in is, how do we deal with that? Many of us are brought up with, don't talk about it at work. And now we're saying talk about it at work. So because Gabrielle's having some technical issues, we're going to read her answers. She's going to email me some answers. So I know we all appreciate technical issues right now. Mel, what would you say to that? How do we start this conversation for people that say, I don't want to talk about that. That's uncomfortable.
Well, no real change is going to take place until we're uncomfortable about this. We have to jump in there and start. There has been a wake-up call going on our streets and the news, so on and so forth, and we have to be very real and candid about our conversation. I've worked at IBM, MCI, Equifax, and AT&T as a black man surrounded with white individuals, and I didn't have a voice. I almost felt like I didn't belong, and I wanted to speak so much, and I had such a big responsibility. I think it is important that you have town halls where people can speak up and then state their truth and make it more comfortable to talk about these issues. Because if we don't have these hard conversations, everybody, nothing's going to change. So, we have to change.
And I want to be very clear here for those of us maybe not in leadership positions. It doesn't need to be a leader. This can be anybody in your organization. I tell a very powerful story that one of the ways my children, my 3 kids, some of you know as a single mom, learned so much about this was from our bus driver in our town, who really taught and took my kids under their wing and talked to them from a very early age. I'm up here in Austin, New York. And they talked at a very early age about how to talk about difficult situations. So I invite everybody in this conversation. This is not a leadership down or this up or this across. I don't know, Jada, what do you think?
Absolutely. When we really look at our experience, and I love the fact that Mel, brought his personal experience in, because all of us have had some form of experience as it relates to what does it look like when we are trying to have this hard conversation. And, I went to school and then grad school, graduated from college, went to grad school, and I was the only African-American in the class. And that was really tough, but I can remember not feeling comfortable having the conversation about how I felt.
So Jada, this is going to come right now, right? Jada and Mel are somewhat prepared because we've been together, luckily, as a team. So Jada, you and I are colleagues, which we are, and you're saying what you said, and I'm thinking, wow, I don't know whether to refer to Jada as African American or person of color or Black, or I'm so confused, and that's what I'm thinking about. So I'm just thinking about what am I going to say next? I'm not really listening to Jada because that's the way the brain works, right? The brain is working about, I don't know what to say.
Mhm.
So help me. What do I do, Jada? I don't want to hurt your feelings. I don't want to say anything wrong, but you used one word, Mel used another word. I'm sure Gabrielle would use another word. How do I know what to say to that?
So it's interesting that you're saying that, because growing up I was confused. So you know,
So was I.
it's the truth. It's like, do I? And especially now, there's, you know, I heard someone say, "Well, we're not from Africa, so why are we calling ourselves African American?" And then, you know, there was the whole, well, we're identified as Negro. Well, there was a time where I thought that was offensive. And then, you know, it was, okay, so you're Black. Well, if you're literal, my skin tone and Mel's skin tone we're very much not, and even Gabrielle, we're not of the darker complected race. So we're talking about colorism. So, I mean, I think you, Wendy, being white, the reason why you're confused is because there are a lot of us who are confused as well. So the reality, I would say, is there is nothing wrong with asking, how do you identify? I think Mel did a great.
So let's stop there. I think that is a great point. And many of you have written to me this question in the last panels. How should I refer to that's but Jada's not speaking, unless I'm wrong, Jada, are you speaking for every Black woman in the world?
I can't.
Mel, how about you?
Absolutely not. No.
So I'm not done with this conversation, is what you're saying. Just because I asked Jada, I didn't check it off, and I asked Jada.
Right.
And so I think that is, and somebody's saying, how do we work in our handbook when it comes to things like our hair? And I don't know, Mel, should I go with you about the hair question? Or,
Probably not. Probably not.
You know what I mean? We've talked about this before, but you know, I also did consulting back down at IBM, and I remember we had this question about tattoos and things. So Jada, what would you tell, what advice do you have for people about making sure their handbook is inclusive, about hair or about dress?
You know, I like to look at it from an umbrella perspective. Professionally, if you are neat, if you are well groomed, then that to me is inclusive. However, there is no way, say 4 or 5 years ago, that I would be on this panel with braids. And Wendy, I don't think you've ever seen me with braids, have you?
No, I love it.
Yeah. So for me, I too am embracing a more genuine and authentic part of myself, because it's more included and accepted now, where there would have been a time I would not have done this. So my point is, I believe that and again, I'm speaking from my perspective and my experiences. I've worked for a Black company for 10 years. It was the largest African-American publishing company. And I say African-American because that's how they have identified their company. So for 10 years, it was acceptable to just be a Black American or an African American. When I stepped outside of that environment, it became a little more challenging for me, because I had to relearn what was acceptable versus what was not acceptable. Some of the children could not go to school with braided hair. The Black boys could not go to school with braided hair in some cases that I have dealt with. So now being inclusive, meaning if braids are culturally acceptable and that's how you identify as an African American or Black American.
So Jada, are we writing that in our handbooks? Do you think employer handbooks should include that?
I think it should be included. And I also believe that if you are Indian and it's not acceptable for you to show your hair, you should be, it should be inclusive, that how you identify and present is acceptable in the workplace.
Right. And you know, one of our own is saying, yeah, but you know, this is a conversation about what neat. You know, I don't see many men dressed like Mel anymore, like the white shirt and the Brooks Brothers look. You know, we're more the J. Crew, the sweatsuit look now that we're home. So neat is part of the definition. And I think for those who are asking about your handbook, we want to encourage your company to talk about what does it look like? What does neat look like? What's comfortable? And how do you get to that authentic self? What's that journey like? So I love that idea about including it in your handbook. The more that you talk about these topics, the more that we're going to see improvement. So let me go back to Mel, and I would ask you to talk a little bit about what has been the hardest question that you've ever gotten in regard to race. What is the hardest question that you've ever gotten?
Well, I was at the University of Tennessee, Chattanooga. I was the first Black to integrate the white fraternities there. And I would have fraternity brothers come up to me and says, I don't like Black people, but I like you. And, you know, how do I relate to you? How do I understand these Black people? And it was just really tough for me. Some people would actually run up to me and touch me and run away because they never touched a Black person before. So I would let them know, listen, just like our fraternity, we're brothers, and you have to see me as brothers. And, you know, even in a hiring process, it's about seeing the person rather than putting them in a box or a peg. You know, I didn't choose to be the way that I was born. I was born this way. I'm going to accept it. I have high self-esteem as a result of it. Okay. Just be very careful about putting blinders on when you're talking with other people in terms of conversation, in terms of what you're ordering for people and food, and just thinking that I am a certain way. I have the best of both worlds in some ways, that I've assimilated both the Black culture and the white culture. So I've taken it on myself to be a mix, and I think we should understand both sides of ourselves.
But now we're still living in the world. You got to check a box.
Yeah,
right?
This is
true.
Application,
you got to check a box.
Yeah. And when we when we let that fall away, you know, when I was sitting in IBM next to Bill, my friend Bill, I never saw him as a white guy. He was my friend. He was my buddy. And I just now yesterday was like, wow, he was white. After 2-3 years, I didn't even know. So I'm hoping we unplug people, and I'm hoping people get educated. So let me just check in. Gabrielle thinks that maybe she's got the phone thing going on. So Gabrielle, I'm sure you have a ton to say. I'll sort of leave it up to you to give a 2-minute catch up on any of the topics we've talked about, and welcome back. Or maybe not. Gabrielle, I don't know.
Do you hear me?
Yeah, let's try it one more time. Go ahead, Gabrielle. No. Okay. So Jada, microaggressions are all over the news, and I've heard it more and more. But before when someone talks to me about microaggressions, would you do me a favor and go and define what a microaggression is? And can you make it real, like really simple?
A microaggression is an act or a statement that undermines and devalues a person's humanity without the intent of being negative or demeaning. And it could definitely stem from an unconscious bias or preference.
You know what my microaggression is, Jada?
What's that?
Anyone who knows me, you know what it is for me?
What is it?
Oh, you're from a broken family. Your family's broken.
Yep.
That's absolutely a microaggression, right?
Yep. And
what would that example for you? I'm sure you've had many.
I have so many, but one that I get quite often is that you are so articulate. And so I go, okay, so what does that mean? What does that really mean? Or you are so educated, or you're so smart. And the underlying assumption of that, or the message, is that people of color are not usually intelligent or articulate. And so with that, and I just say flat out that microaggressions are hurtful. Yep. They're just downright hurtful. And I can remember being hurt on so many levels, just kind of walking away from a person going, I cannot believe that she just said that, you know. And it's
So again, let's make it real for the audience.
Mhm.
When you, and all of us are going to say a microaggression. I mean, everyone, Jada and Mel, and we've been together for a long time. By the way, we've had many different little bumps along the roads, and I'm sure they're happy to tell you all my stuff.
Yep.
And so microaggressions or passive aggressive, some people want to refer it to, they're going to happen. So Mel, what in the moment, in that moment where they said, wow, this is so surprising, Mel, what do I do? How do I handle
Well,
it? What's the best outcome?
I think it's going to take courage and it's going to take strength to say this. You have to say, did I offend you in some way? That was not my intent. Understanding that, you know, sometimes people just don't know what they don't know. And it's a time to educate them on, let me tell you what happened mentally for me in terms of what you said. Just so if you're ever in a situation like that again, it doesn't happen. Here's how I took your statement.
And, you know, many of us know this tip, but, you know, and so forgive me if I'm repeating myself or if you've heard this, but just starting with an I statement really does make a difference, right? Just saying, wow, you know, I really was offended by that. I was really hurt by that. You know, acknowledging that opens up the conversation. I want this to get better. I want to give you every benefit of the doubt versus, you know, you really messed this up. It's a temptation. And I think if you listen and you catch yourself, you'll see that, right? And so, you know, I wanted to give it a little bit, turn it a little bit to the right, because today for some of us or many of us, our children are going back to school in some form or fashion. And I do have an interesting concern about the lack of social interaction that some of our children in this country, the lack of exposure that they're going to be having or might be having. So what can I do? You know, how do I change that? Jada, sorry.
Yep.
You guys jump in here. You need their name.
Hey, we are expecting you to say, hey, go ahead, this person, because you're always so in control, Wendy. We love that.
There you go.
So I'll definitely say that children need that social connection. And right now, even for me, I have a niece and a nephew that I'm very active in raising and connecting with them and making sure that not only that they feel emotionally and psychologically safe, but that they are continuing to blossom and to bloom socially. So, you know, we have made huge pivots during this period of time of social distancing, and having an opportunity to have virtual play dates. My goodness, we have been so resourceful in continuing to just transition through difficult times. So yeah, the virtual play dates, making sure that they're getting out and walking. You know, they are now, my niece and nephew are driving around and learning more about geographical locations in their area. So they're not sitting at home just kind of, you know, playing video games and things like that. So it's important to socialize.
You know, and you know, be mindful. I'm preparing for today, so I'm sure both of you did. My own daughter was talking about Sex and the City, and I know many people watch that show. And they did a super interesting journey about how many racist things over the seasons of episodes had come out in Sex and the City, and they pointed it out. And I thought, wow, if you go back in time, what was permitted then, 10 years ago, 15 years ago, and now, I learned so much from doing the journey of the media. And I'm sure for many of us, I know in the pre-call, we had some discussions about shows like Blackish. Mel, what do you think? Pro or con? Where are we on that show?
Well, you know, the show itself, we talked about, it's not necessarily if it's realistic, it's great. I think a lot of people do things for comedy. I'm not a fan of that show in particular. Friends, back in the day, there were some racial things that were happening as well. There are some good shows out there now that are doing a good job about, you know, telling us who we are as a people. There's like a lot of good movies that talk about, you know, our journey. I do want to say this is maybe a little shocker to all of you, but I encourage everybody to watch Roots, the new one and the old one. That story is about my family. I'm actually related to James Haley.
Wow.
Mr. Haley, yeah, and to see the struggle that people have gone through during that time, and when you talk about women coming into NASA, that movie, there's just so many great movies out there that we can watch to help us break this barrier. And understand other cultures. So I've got 4 or 5 I do want to recommend here, or maybe towards the end.
No, go for it now, Mel. I've got my chat ready. I'm ready to put it down.
All
Go
right,
for it.
sounds good. First, there is a movie, When They See Us, and it's about the Central Park Five. Very interesting movie to see their journey and what it went through. There's a book, actually, How to Be an Anti-Racist, and it's actually on a New York Times bestseller list. The Warmth of Our Sons. It's the epic story of the Great Migration. And it's funny, my dad was a soldier during the Detroit riots, and my mother was in the riots. And that's kind of how they met. So I've got a whole thing with that history. Just Mercy is very good. The Black Manager is a good book to read, as well as the play Fences.
And we're going to put all these resources, and I know Gabrielle did drop off, but one thing that she taught that I think is a great point is, for me, read Black Enterprise. So I'll throw a question out to the audience. Let's do a little quiz for them. Tell me, recently on the news, Tyler Perry just became one of the few Black billionaires. What was his mission statement? And I'm going to leave it for a second. And Jada and Mel, you can't play in this game right now. What was his claim to fame? I mean, how did he get to be a billionaire? We're all business people here. How did he make his money? What was his mission statement? Come on, guys, cough it up. All these resources will be located in the anti-resource section on the website, in the Anti-Resources Center. You guys are going to guess, how did Tyler Perry, I know some of you on that. How are you going to, how did Tyler Perry become a billionaire? People are loving the resources, so that's good. Jada and Mel, do you think you know?
Can I guess?
Mel knows. What about you, Jada?
I definitely know, but is the question, how did he become a billionaire? Or
what was his mission statement? Which made him ended up being a billionaire, because he stayed true to his mission statement.
Yeah, I actually don't know.
You want to share?
I don't know. Go ahead.
His mission statement was to create a world for Blacks, to create media for Blacks, to create stories for Blacks, to create movies for Blacks. That was his target audience. He stayed in that mission statement. And, for some of us, they may say like, well, wow, but again, you've got to go back in time. You've got to look at the journey. You've got to follow his business model. I'm a big believer as a leader in impact management. Neurologically, we will remember stories. Right. So when you're telling stories in your companies, in your families, make sure you're using diverse stories. Make sure you're using inspirational, great stories about people that were incredibly successful. Not just the Kardashian story, the Tyler Perry story. Jada, who's your role model? Who's your go-to, just admire more than anything in the world?
Believe it or not, Wendy, I have so many.
Okay, but share one or two.
I don't. I will say, and this is not just the go-to person, but I am going to say Oprah, but I have to say why.
Okay.
Because there's a little controversy there, and it seems like she would be the easiest pick. However, if you look at Oprah's story, if you look at it historically, some of the challenges that she had to overcome, I can relate and connect to feeling devalued, feeling that I had to work harder, feeling just the pain of not being good enough no matter what I did. But to see that she was able to conquer that along the way, it really did give me inspiration to keep going. And this is not a victimization statement. It's just some realities, knowing that my grandmother was a daughter of a slave who picked cotton, and I know those stories. My mother, who grew up during times of inequality and had to use a separate bathroom from white. So I know these stories very personally, and they're painful stories. But to know that I was able to do something greater than that is all worth it. And Oprah was my inspiration in
I
that.
love it. Great. Mel, how about you?
Martin Luther King. I moved to Atlanta to be the next Martin Luther King. So what's interesting about his journey is that he saw an injustice. He was able to motivate people from the heart. He got people together purely by his emotional intelligence, and he woke people, and he created a mission that's still going on. It's so I cannot explain in words to be able to go here in Atlanta and see where he was raised. They're still going through his church. I still feel his energy. I encourage everybody to listen to any of his talks, to watch them with your family, and just be inspired by his message and his purpose and his destiny. You know, I had the honor to meet John Lewis, who has passed, and just to be around individuals that have gone to that next level, that have fought for all of us, for dealing with injustice. He's just absolutely been a rock to me.
I had the unusual opportunity about 2 years ago to go down to Alabama and teach a group of lawyers about leadership. And we decided to show the entire Martin Luther King speech, which many people have not seen the entire. They've only seen I Have a Dream. They actually haven't watched the entire speech. So I really would encourage you to do that. And it was a fascinating experience to talk about what it was like to be in Birmingham, Alabama, as Martin Luther King is calling their leaders racist, and what that experience in their history was like. So I know we're near the end. I wanted to talk about two things left. And to me, they're the hardest conversations as we're ending our series. And one is about fear, which is so much of this topic is about fear of unknown, fear of fill in the blank. So Jada, how do I overcome the fear of what I don't know about a different race or a different culture or a different lifestyle? And let me ask you the harder question. Do you believe I can?
The quick answer is yes. And
love the answer. That's what we're going for.
Yeah, hey, just get right to it. Yes. And exposure.
Yep.
The only way for us to conquer that which we are afraid of is to expose ourselves to it. It's no different from being afraid of flying. What's the best way you're going to get over that fear is go flying. If you're afraid of an elevator, what is the best way to get over that fear is to get into an elevator. How the brain processes experiences is very instrumental in transitioning from being afraid to being very much aware of your fear. So that's what I would say.
That's an important point. We are here. This is going to be a hard one for Mel to top. We are here because we believe that we absolutely can mess up, can have a dialogue, can say and do the wrong thing, can be angry at each other, and then learn and grow and be better off from it. We've gone through the fear of conflict to come to the other side. I love that. Mel, how about you?
Well, if you think about the definition of fear, fear is the anticipation of pain, and a lot of things we fear is an illusion. So I think it's breaking through some of the things that we're afraid of. Me going to a school where I'm the only Black person was something that changed my life, that made me a different person. So we have to face our fears to rise above it. I personally believe, I'm not talking about having generations before this racial issue ends. I think it can be done in a generation. And we just have to do the work. We have to see what our fears are, put them on the table, and then address them. And you do it together, right? You know, one of the greatest parts of my life is then being able to work with you in terms of some of the seminars you've done, the education done. And we talk about fear all the time in our seminars and lowering that level. It is about getting educated. The more people that are out there getting educated, learning how to do their self-care in this work, how to get educated, and, you know, if you wanted to do an action step right away, it's about getting educated about your emotions about fear. What is that you really fear? Most of it's not going to happen, right? It's an illusion. So let's start waking up about our fear.
And we don't want to make things simple, but I also don't want to make them more complicated. So we look at bookends. fear of saying the wrong thing, fear of, of sharing. Some of us grew up in families where we had parents or grandparents or great parents that said things that were just, oh my goodness, I can't believe that's coming out of their mouth, fear of that coming out. But on the other end, I want to end on a really positive note. So for me, it's one of the things that Mel talked about is empathy, right? What do I need to know as a white person? I'm not going to have your experience, never going to have that experience, but tell me how I can feel, how you feel. Tell me how I can learn, how I can be more empathetic as a white person today. Jada, how can I be more empathetic as a white person in today's world?
Ask questions. And ask questions from a genuine and authentic perspective. But I also want to say something to all people of color. This is not an opportunity to stick it to a white person again, just because we're open to having that conversation, because I'm seeing a lot of that as well. This is an opportunity for us to come together and to recognize our humanity and that we all bleed the same.
Love that. Mel, you've got the daunting task of finishing it up before Marcia kicks in.
Bring it. The empathy, Dr. Brene Brown has an excellent video on this on YouTube, what the definition of empathy is. And I think it's about spending more time with other cultures, having town halls where we're having conversations like this, where you're getting together with your neighbors and talking about this. I think it's about having a diverse fringe set and just asking questions to the people that you know in your life that be open to some of the questions. How do you like to be approached? What is your thinking about this? Seeing both sides of the coin. So you have to have a diverse amount of friends to understand a different race, in my opinion.
Yeah, I agree. Jada and Mel, I'm so honored to work with you every day. So thank you so much for being part of it. And I just want to say to Marcia and Heidi, we have so enjoyed sharing our stories that we've been doing over here at BLI for about 20 years and sharing these podcasts with everybody and anybody. So I really encourage you, beg you, urge you to share them on social media, continue them. We're a global company, and sometimes Westchester in this area, we forget how progressive and how lucky we are. And Marcia said nice things about me, but I'm going to say much nicer things about her. I've been fortunate enough to learn from her and just starting to learn from Heidi as a business person that has encouraged me to take our dreams and this kind of platforms bigger and bigger. So for all of you that have the opportunity to share this conversation, I can tell you that by sharing them, my little company talks to just about 2 million people a year. We get notes from people in the Philippines and Thailand and China and all over the world saying what these conversations mean. So please take an opportunity to share all our recordings. And Marcia, I can't thank you and Heidi enough for giving us the opportunity. So I'll pass it back to you.
Wendy, I have to say that, first of all, let me thank Jada and Mel and Gabrielle, who I know.
I know, she feels horrible. She's already texted me a million times how badly this has never happened. And I think everybody on the phone feels empathy for technology today.
Absolutely,
so we're with you.
Absolutely. But Jada and Mel, you've been with us. You kicked us off and you tied us up here in a very, very positive way. And Wendy, your company, when we called you and said we wanted to do this, you just pulled it together for us. And so the takeaway here, you use the word takeaway, and I wrote that down. So one, we are all here because we believe that we can learn and grow. And I want to thank the people the participants who have tuned in week after week and have shared. Many of you have been at every one, and others have listened afterwards. And you are all here because you want to learn and grow. And it's been noted, and we appreciate it, and we appreciate everyone who is sharing. But Wendy, your company has really taken the lead here, and you provided us with a great opportunity for the Westchester business community and the business community throughout New York State. So thank you to Balancing Life's Issues, and I do want to thank all of our partners also, because when we contacted you back in June to be a partner, you were all such great forward visionary thinkers. And so we want to thank the Business Council of New York State, the Hudson Gateway Association of Realtors, the Hudson Valley Gateway Chamber of Commerce, New York State Economic Development Council, Putnam County Business Council, and the Westchester Putnam Workforce Development Board. By the way, this is not the last you will hear from the Business Council of Westchester. This was the first step. This is something that we are very, very committed to as an organization. I know our chairman, Heidi Davidson, joins me in this. We are moving forward. We are bringing our community forward. We are representing the business community in Westchester and sharing with others throughout New York and the region. Wendy, thank you all. Jada, Mel, thank you. You're really, really inspiring. So with that, happy September. Happy back to school for whatever that looks like for your children and your community. Happy back to work in this moving forward for whatever that looks like in your workplace. And let's all take the lessons that we've learned from this series and carry it forward. Have a great day, everyone. Stay well, stay safe, and wear your mask. That's the first time I've done that. So enjoy, everyone, and have a great day.